Welcome to Sleepcast, probably the most boring podcast in the world. Sleepcast is created to help you relax, slow down, and gently drift off to sleep. There's nothing you need to remember and nowhere else you need to be. Simply get comfortable, close your eyes, and allow tonight's quiet story to carry you away. And now, we hand things over to our two hosts for today's episode. Rest well and enjoy.
Imagine standing in the middle of a city street. It's March of 1938.
Right in the thick of it.
Yeah, exactly. The air is just incredibly thick with smoke and dust.
Yeah.
And you've got that acrid smell of explosives everywhere.
Because Italian bomber planes had literally just swept over the city of Barcelona.
Yeah, dropping these completely devastating payloads as part of the Spanish Civil War. It's brutal.
It's a horrific scene, for anyone to be living through.
Absolutely. And in this scene, you're looking at the smoking, pulverized rubble of a building. It is just completely leveled.
Nothing left.
Right. But the crazy thing is, this isn't a military barracks.
Yeah.
It's not some vital government building either. It's actually the headquarters of a local sports club.
Which is just wild to think about.
I mean, the building is gone. Their trophies are literally buried in ash. And by all logical metrics, this organization should be completely dead.
Finished. Just a casualty of war.
Exactly. But the mind-blowing part is, not only does this organization survive the bombing, but they eventually grow to become, well, one of the most recognized, financially massive entities on planet Earth.
And culturally potent, too. I mean, they are massive.
Which is why we are here today. Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. We are super thrilled you're here with us.
You really are.
Today, we aren't just doing some basic sports recap. We are going to unpack the blueprint of an institution that somehow wove itself into the fabric of regional culture and political defiance.
And artistic expression.
Yes. To become a true global phenomenon, we are, of course, talking about FC Barcelona.
And, to really trace this incredible evolution, we're working with a super fascinating stack of primary material today.
We really are.
We're diving into a highly curated selection of historical archives, and these are straight from FC Barcelona's official documentation.
Which covers their entire timeline, right?
Exactly. From their very foundation back in 1899 all the way up to their record-breaking peak in, the 2010s.
So, the mission for you listening today is to extract the real aha moments from these documents. Like, how does a club, started by a bunch of random expatriates, evolve into this massive symbol of resistance?
Right.
And how does it rewrite the literal geometry of its sport? Plus, how does it build the cultural audacity to claim it's, more than a club?
And I think it's vital to frame why this matters to you right now, today, because even if you've never watched a football match in your life...
Even if you actively hate sports.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you hate sports, this whole thing is a complete masterclass in resilience and branding.
Oh, totally.
It is this profound study of what happens when an organization anchors itself to a set of core values and just refuses to let go, even when these terrifying external pressures are actively trying to crush them.
Yeah, and I do actually want to make a really quick note on that before we jump into the timeline.
Good call.
Because the archives we are analyzing today, they document some deeply charged, incredibly dark political events.
Especially during the dictatorship in Spain.
Right. And because we're working directly from the club's own historical records. We have to look at this highly politicized period strictly through the lens of how it structurally impacted this organization.
Right. It's about the mechanics of the club.
Exactly. We definitely aren't here to pass any sort of political judgment or endorse viewpoints or take sides in any way. We are just unpacking the history as it shapes the entity we're studying today, based purely on the documents we have.
That is such a crucial distinction. We are solely analyzing the mechanics of their survival and growth based on the source text.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to rewind the clock to the very beginning.
All the way back.
The year is 1899. We are in Barcelona, Spain. And the catalyst for this multi-billion-dollar empire is a young Swiss expat named Joan Gamper.
Right, Gamper.
So he arrives in Barcelona in 1898. And a year later, in October of 1899, he does something that is just remarkably mundane.
It really is.
He places an advertisement in a local magazine called Los Deportes, basically just asking if anyone wants to get together and play some football.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of a grassroots beginning. Gamper wasn't trying to found a global brand at all. He literally just wanted to kick about.
I just have to stop and think about the modern equivalent of this,
Yeah.
Gamper's ad is essentially a 19th century Craigslist post.
Huh. Yeah, exactly.
Like, hey, I'm new in town, looking for some guys to kick a ball around on the weekend. And from that single, totally unassuming classified ad, you eventually get an organization with $1 billion revenue stream.
What's fascinating here is the sheer intentionality that immediately followed that casual advertisement.
What do you mean?
Well, because while the ad itself was super simple, Gamper's vision for what that gathering should represent was incredibly sophisticated.
Oh, right. Because on November 29, 1899, the people who actually responded to the ad met up.
Yeah, at a place called the Soleil Gymnasium.
And the 12 men who showed up, I mean, they were a completely mixed bag.
They really were.
Looking at the roster from that first meeting in the archives, it's wild. You've got Swiss, English, German, Catalan, and Aragonese men all in one room.
Which, in 1899, that kind of international mingling in a local sporting context wasn't exactly the default.
No, not at all.
Barcelona, at the turn of the century, was this booming industrial hub. So it was drawing in merchants, engineers, and workers from all over Europe.
Right.
Gamper looked at this diverse room, and he deliberately envisioned an organization that could act as a social bridge.
Okay, so it wasn't just about sports.
No, he didn't just want a football team. He wanted a democratic society. He instituted this model where the club would be freely governed by its members.
Which is a huge structural decision, right?
Where so?
Like, they aren't owned by some wealthy benefactor who calls all the shots. The members actually vote.
Exactly. It's a foundational pillar that actually survives to this very day.
Wow.
Furthermore, Gamper insisted on a multi-sport focus. So it wasn't just about football, it was about athletic fraternity in general.
Okay, I see.
And crucially, as a gesture of profound gratitude to the region of Catalonia for taking him in, he deliberately intertwined the club's identity with Catalan culture.
Wait, I actually want to push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
Why would a Swiss guy care so deeply about Catalan identity? I mean, wouldn't he just want a generic international club for other expats?
It's a really great question. You have to look at the socio-cultural climate of Barcelona at that time.
Okay.
Catalonia was experiencing this massive cultural renaissance. It was a resurgence of their specific language, their art, and regional pride.
Oh, gotcha.
So Gamper, being a foreigner, recognized that to truly build a community institution, he needed to align with the heartbeat of the city itself.
That makes a lot of sense.
He integrated his fellow expats by having them embrace the local culture rather than just creating an isolated expat bubble.
That is incredibly savvy community building.
So those four pillars, Catalan identity, democracy, multiple sports, and universality, were basically the genetic code written right there in that gymnasium.
But the look of the club, that iconic aesthetic we all recognize today, that actually wasn't there from day one, was it?
Not at all. If you look at their original badge in the documents, it wasn't that distinct crest we know now.
What was it?
It was literally just the official coat of arms of the city of Barcelona.
Just the city seal.
Yep, just the city seal surrounded by a laurel and a palm branch.
Talk about taking local alignment literally. They just slapped the city seal on their shirts.
It was a very explicit statement of solidarity, like, we are of this city.
Right.
It actually wasn't until a decade later, in 1910, that the club held an internal design competition to create their own unique crest.
Oh, so that's where the famous bowl-shaped design comes from.
Exactly, which, with a few tweaks, is the one they still use today.
Okay, but what about the colors? The famous deep blue and claret red, the Blaugrana, as it's known. Where did that come from?
Okay, so this is a wonderful piece of historical trivia from the archives. They point to a highly probable origin story involving two of the founding members.
Who were they?
Arthur and Ernest Whitty. The Whitty brothers were English, and in their youth, they had attended the Merchant Taylors' School in Crosby over in England.
Let me guess. The school's rugby team wore blue and claret.
Precisely. They proposed the colors of their old school rugby kit. Gamper agreed, and suddenly you have this beautiful synthesis.
Wow, a Swiss founder and English public schools rugby colors all wrapping a fundamentally Catalan identity.
That universality is amazing. It really was a melting pot.
But despite all those lofty ideals, The actual day-to-day reality of running this club in the early 1900s sounds like a complete logistical nightmare.
No, it was a chaotic existence.
The archives note they were completely nomadic.
Yeah, you have to remember, Barcelona was expanding rapidly at this point. Real estate was at an absolute premium.
Right, so where did they play?
The club had very little money, so they were essentially squatting or renting whatever flat piece of land they could find.
That is hilarious.
They played on a former cycle track, the grounds of a luxury hotel. There's various uneven fields on the outskirts of town.
It's so funny to picture these guys in their heavy woolen, long-sleeve merchant tailor's colors trying to play a serious match on a bumpy field next to a hotel.
While wealthy tourists are probably just watching them in total confusion.
Exactly. It was far from glamorous. And yet, the sporting success actually came relatively quickly.
It did. Their first official piece of silverware was the Copa Masia.
This is in the 1901 season, right?
Yes, which was essentially the precursor to the Catalan Football Championship.
Now, the archives specifically highlight that the Copa Masia trophy itself was an exceptional piece of modernist art.
Right.
Now, why is the specific art style of a sports trophy relevant enough to be highlighted in the official club records?
Because it perfectly illustrates how deeply the club was integrating into the cultural fabric of the time.
How so?
Well, the early 1900s in Barcelona was the absolute peak of Catalan modernism. This is the era of Antoni Gaudí.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The architecture, the art, the design, everything was moving toward these beautiful, organic, nature-inspired shapes.
Right.
And it was all a way of expressing a unique Catalan spirit. So for the club's very first trophy to be a piece of modernist art.
It conceptually linked their athletic achievements with the region's artistic and cultural awakening.
Exactly.
So the club isn't just a sports team anymore. It's becoming this cultural artifact. That is a really beautiful setup.
It is.
But the thing about deeply ingrained regional values, like this commitment to a specific cultural identity and democratic open expression, is that they're very easy to uphold when times are relatively peaceful.
Very true.
As we move into the next major era in the archives, starting roughly in 1939, those exact same values are going to put a massive, highly visible target on the club's back.
Yes. We are entering the post-Spanish Civil War era.
And this is where things get really grim.
The archives refer to this period stretching from 1939 through the 1940s as the time of perseverance.
But honestly, survival might be a more accurate word, right?
Yeah, survival is definitely more fitting.
Because we mentioned the bombing in the intro, where fascist air forces literally destroyed the club's physical headquarters in 1938.
That alone is staggering.
It is. But the human toll on the organization was even more devastating than the physical one.
It was catastrophic. During the war, a large portion of the team had actually gone on a tour to Mexico and the United States.
To raise funds.
Partly to raise funds for the club, yeah. But also, frankly, to escape the violence at home.
Right.
When the conflict ended and the new political dictatorship took control of Spain, those players who had gone abroad were viewed with extreme suspicion.
Oh, no.
Yeah, many were officially suspended from playing for 2 years upon their return.
2 years.
Yep. And several others chose never to return at all, opting for permanent exile.
So just to recap, your headquarters is rubble.
Right.
Your best players are either suspended or living in exile.
Right.
And you are operating under a regime that views your entire organizational DNA with profound distrust.
Because the new dictatorship was heavily focused on a centralized, unified national identity.
Okay, so anything outside of that is a threat.
Exactly. Anything that promoted regional autonomy, separate languages, or Republican sympathies was heavily suppressed.
And FC Barcelona, with its deep ties to Catalan nationalism and its democratic member voting structure, was basically the antithesis of the regime's ideology.
Spot on. And just to reiterate, we are analyzing this purely from the historical facts laid out in the club's archives, not taking any political stance ourselves.
Absolutely. Strictly adhering to the documents. And the systemic repression they faced, reading about it is just chilling.
It really is.
It wasn't just about making things difficult for them. It was a deliberate attempt to overwrite their entire identity.
Yeah.
The authorities actually forced the club to change its name.
Correct. The club's official name was Football Club Barcelona, which uses the Catalan spelling of football.
F-U-T-B-O-L, right?
Yes. The regime forced them to change it to Club de Futbol Barcelona, using the Spanish spelling.
It seems like such a tiny grammatical tweak, just switching the words around, but the psychological weight of that is massive.
It is.
It's basically the state telling you your language, your version of things is literally no longer permitted.
And they didn't stop at the name. Remember the badge?
The one they designed back in 1910.
Yeah, the one that featured the 4 red stripes of the Catalan flag in the upper right quadrant.
What'd they do to it?
The regime ordered them to alter the badge, reducing the number of stripes so it looked less like the Catalan flag and more like just a generic design.
Wow.
They systematically stripped away the visual and nominal markers that Gamper had instituted.
It went beyond just aesthetics too, right? It went straight into the boardroom.
Oh, absolutely.
Gamper's democratic model was completely suspended. Up until 1946, the sports authorities of the regime simply handpicked the club's presidents.
They installed their own loyalists to run the organization.
Keep an eye on them.
Exactly. The goal was to ensure the club could be monitored and controlled, acting as a passive vehicle for the new regime rather than a point of resistance.
So you have puppet presidents, a banned language, a censored badge, suspended players, and a destroyed headquarters.
It's bleak.
By all accounts, the club's unique identity should have been totally suffocated.
You think so?
But this is where the dynamic completely flips. Because the archives describe the club's stadium during this time, the Les Corts Stadium, as an oasis of freedom during these years of absolute misery and fear.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of crowd psychology and sociology, it is truly profound.
How so?
Think about it. When public expression of your regional identity, your language, and your culture is heavily restricted or outright banned in the streets,
Yeah.
a football match undergoes this radical transformation.
Right, it stops being just a game.
Exactly. It becomes a proxy for cultural survival.
Wow.
The stadium becomes one of the very few places in society where tens of thousands of people can gather in one place safely.
That makes total sense.
And even if they can't explicitly hold up political banners or shout political slogans, they can collectively feel their shared identity through the simple act of cheering for their team.
So wait. By aggressively trying to crush and suppress the club's regional identity, did the authorities actually accidentally give them the greatest marketing tool in history?
Essentially, yes.
Like, did they inadvertently forge a bond of authenticity with the community that a normal sports team could never artificially create?
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Yes, absolutely. The shared trauma and the collective defiance forged an unbreakable, almost spiritual bond between the fans and the club.
Man.
Les Corts wasn't just a stadium, it was a sanctuary. People didn't just go to watch football, they went to feel like themselves for 2 hours on a Sunday.
You squeeze coal that tightly, and the core just turns into a diamond.
Precisely.
And remarkably, while acting as this socio-political sanctuary, the team actually started winning again. As the 1940s progressed, they experienced this massive sporting resurgence.
They really did, fueled by the arrival of some incredibly pivotal figures. The foremost among them was Cesar Rodriguez.
Okay, the archives note he scored 304 goals during his time there, which is an astronomical number.
It is huge.
But it's his specific style that I love. He was famous for these spectacular diving headers.
Cesar was an absolute phenomenon in the air.
I just try to picture the visceral impact of that for the fans, you know.
Yeah.
Your daily life is defined by restriction, keeping your head down, not speaking out of turn.
Right.
And then on Sunday, you go to the stadium and you watch this man literally launch himself through the air, throwing caution to the wind, flying horizontally just to smash a ball with his forehead into the back of a net.
It's quite an image.
It must have felt so wildly cathartic, so liberating to watch for those fans.
It was athletic poetry for a crowd that desperately needed something to cheer for.
And he wasn't alone.
Right. No, you had Stanislav Basora, an incredible winger who provided just endless crosses for Cesar, and Antoni Ramilets, who is still considered one of the greatest goalkeepers in the club's history.
And there was a crucial shift in management, too. Joseph Samitier.
Samitier.
He'd been a massive star player for them in the 1920s, and he transitioned back to the club as the manager in 1944.
Samitier was this incredible tactical bridge. He understood the historical weight of the club because he had lived it as a player.
Right.
Under his leadership, he synthesized this new talent and led them to the 1944-45 league title.
Which was a huge deal, right?
Massive. It was their first league title since 1929.
Wow, that's a long gap.
It proved that despite the puppet presidents and all the repression, the actual sporting heart of the club was beating stronger than ever.
And this momentum culminates right at the end of the decade, in 1949. They win their first official European title, the Latin Cup, beating Sporting Clube de Portugal.
A huge milestone.
Now, 1949 was also the club's 50th anniversary. They had grown from Gamper's 12 guys in a gym to almost 25,000 official members.
And this 50th anniversary is where we see a subtle but immensely powerful act of rebellion.
What happened?
To commemorate the milestone, a club member named Salvador Grau Mora initiated a push to redesign the crest again.
Let me guess. They wanted the stripes back.
Precisely. They successfully lobbied to reinstate the 4 red stripes of the Catalan flag back onto the club's badge.
Unbelievable.
They quietly reversed the censorship the regime had imposed years earlier.
Sneaking your banned cultural flag back onto the chest of your players while the dictatorship is still in power? That takes incredible nerve.
It really does.
It's a quiet defiance, but it speaks volumes.
It was a monumental statement to the fans. It said, we remember who we are.
But this surge in popularity, this defiant rallying around the team, created a very practical, physical problem.
Always does.
By the time that 1949 anniversary rolled around, looking at the massive swelling crowd showing up at Les Courts, it was painfully obvious that the club had completely outgrown its infrastructure.
Yes, Les Courts was just bursting at the seams. I mean, the 25,000 members were just the people paying dues.
Right, the actual fan base was vastly larger.
Way larger. They desperately needed a new temple to hold this growing congregation. And as we transition into the 1950s, they didn't just build a temple, they found a demigod to put inside it.
Okay, this brings us to a wildly dynamic period the archives call the Kubala era, which spans from 1950 to 1961.
Yes, the 50s.
To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, the club's official membership literally doubled in this single decade. It shot from around 26,000 to over 52,000.
And the absolute catalyst, the spark that ignited that explosion, was a player named Ladislao Kubala.
The archives talk about Kubala in almost mythical terms. Who was he, and how did he end up in Barcelona?
Kubala was a Hungarian genius. He was actually a refugee who had fled the Eastern Bloc, traveling through Italy and eventually arriving in Spain.
Oh, wow. What a journey.
Yeah, and the technical secretary at the time, Josep Samitier, the same guy who won them the league as a manager a few years prior, he recognized Kubala's generational talent and orchestrated his signing.
And what made him so special on the pitch? The documents note that he introduced techniques to Spanish football that fans had literally never seen before.
The primary example is curling the ball, or bending it.
Like bending a free kick.
Exactly. Today, thanks to players like Beckham or Messi, we understand the physics of applying spin to a football so it curves around a defensive wall.
Sure, it's pretty standard now.
But in Spain in 1950, that technique was virtually unknown.
So defenders are lining up expecting a straight shot, and Kubala is using the Magnus effect to bend the laws of physics around them.
Yep.
He must have looked like a sorcerer to them.
He was entirely unplayable. He possessed a robust physical strength combined with a delicate technical mastery that was just light years ahead of his time.
Incredible.
He sparked an era of absolute dominance, most notably the legendary Barca of the 5 Cups in the 1951-52 season.
Okay, the 5 Cups. Let's list these off because it's completely absurd.
It really is.
In one season, they won the league, the Spanish Cup, the Latin Cup, the Copa Eva Duarte, and the Copa Martini Rossi.
The forward line from that specific team is etched into the cultural memory of the region.
Who was on it?
You had Ramalitz in goal, Seguer, Biosca, Segarra, Gonzalo III in defense and midfield.
Okay.
And then that attacking front of Basora, Cesar, Kubala, Moreno, and Monchon.
I mean, it reads like an Avengers roster.
They played a spectacular, aggressive brand of football that just completely overwhelmed opponents.
But as with all great sports histories, periods of dominance inevitably spawn intense, bitter rivalries.
They always do.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to talk about the Alfredo Di Stefano controversy of 1953.
Oh, buckle up for this one.
Because if you want to understand the modern animosity between FC Barcelona and Real Madrid, it really crystallizes right here in boardrooms and backroom deals.
The Di Stefano transfer saga is one of the most convoluted, highly politicized, and just bizarre administrative disputes in the history of global sports.
Walk us through the mechanics of this, because it sounds like a corporate espionage thriller.
Well, Alfredo Di Stefano was an Argentine prodigy, arguably the best player in the world at the time.
Okay.
Barcelona recognized this and struck a deal to sign him. They negotiated directly with River Plate, the Argentine club that officially held his rights.
Okay, simple enough, right? You pay the club, you get the player.
But there was a massive complication.
What was it?
Due to a player strike in Argentina a few years prior, Di Stefano is currently playing in Colombia for a team called Millonarios.
Oh, in a different league.
Yeah, and a league that was operating somewhat outside standard FIFA regulations at the time.
So River Plate owned his official FIFA rights, but Millonarios held his actual physical playing contract at that exact moment.
Exactly. So while Barcelona was finalizing things with River Plate, their massive rivals, Real Madrid, swooped in and negotiated a completely separate deal directly with Millonarios.
So two massive Spanish clubs hold two different contracts from two different South American teams for the exact same player.
Yep.
It's a complete legal nightmare.
It was a total impasse. And to resolve it, the Spanish Sports Federation, which, as the archives explicitly note, had deep ties and backing from the Francoist regime, stepped in to mediate.
Again, we're just stating the documented historical facts here.
Right, absolutely.
And the solution they come up with is just hilarious.
Yeah.
The federation rules that Barcelona and Real Madrid have to actually share Di Stefano.
Yes. The official verdict was an alternating custody agreement.
Custody, like a child.
Basically. Di Stefano would play one season for Real Madrid, the next season for Barcelona, then back to Madrid, and so on, for 4 years.
I try to map this onto modern business, and it just breaks my brain.
It's impossible.
Imagine Apple and Google are both trying to hire the greatest software engineer of a generation. They end up in court, and the government steps in and says, look, play nice. Apple, you get him in 2024. Google, he works for you in 2025.
It makes no sense.
How is a team supposed to build tactics, chemistry, or a coherent squad when your best player swaps to your biggest rival every 12 months?
It's structurally untenable, and FC Barcelona recognized the absurdity of it, as well as the implicit bias of a federation ruling that essentially bailed out Real Madrid's late entry into the negotiations.
So what do they do?
So Barcelona's president at the time made a drastic choice. They rejected the verdict completely.
They just walked away.
They tore up the agreement and relinquished the player entirely to Real Madrid. They said, we will not participate in this farce.
That is an incredible flex of institutional pride. But it had to hurt.
Oh, it hurt immensely on the pitch because Di Stefano went on to become one of the greatest players in history.
Yeah, he led Real Madrid to 5 consecutive European Cups.
Exactly. But off the pitch, that refusal cemented a fierce ideological rivalry.
Right.
It became a narrative of the proud, independent Catalan club against the politically favored establishment club of the capital. It was Kubala's Barcelona going head-to-head against Di Stefano's Madrid for absolute supremacy.
It is incredible theater. But even having lost out on Di Stefano, Barcelona didn't just fold. They continued to build a super team. In 1954, they brought in Luis Suarez.
Now, to clarify for modern listeners, this is the original Spanish Luis Suarez, not the Uruguayan striker from recent years.
Right. And this Suarez was an elegant, commanding midfielder. He actually went on to win the Ballon d'Or in 1960.
A fantastic player.
Which is wild, because he is still, to this very day, the only Spanish-born male player to ever win that award.
He was the metronome of the team. And with all this world-class talent and a membership that had skyrocketed past 50,000, Les Corts was no longer viable.
It's just too small.
They needed their new temple.
Enter Camp Nou. The construction of this stadium, which opened in 1957 under President Francesc Miró Sans, is mind-boggling.
It's a marvel.
The archives note it cost 288 million pesetas.
Which was an astronomical sum, far exceeding their initial estimates. It actually plunged the club into significant debt for years.
But they built it anyway. It initially held over 99,000 people. I want you, the listener, to really picture that. 99,000 people in 1957. That's not a stadium. That is a moderately sized city manifesting for 2 hours every week.
If we look at the psychology of undertaking such a massive, debt-inducing architectural project, building Camp Nou wasn't just a utilitarian decision to sell more tickets.
What was it then?
It was a physical affirmation of the organization's modernization.
It's a concrete statement.
Literally and figuratively. It was a monument to their survival.
Right.
The regime had tried to crush them in the 40s, and less than 2 decades later, they are constructing the most imposing, awe-inspiring cathedral of football in Europe.
It's quite the comeback.
It signaled their ambition to not just compete, but to dominate.
And to lead the team into this modern coliseum, they make a fascinating managerial hire in 1958. A man named Helenio Herrera, often just referred to as HH.
Herrera was a revolutionary, but not just tactically. He was a real pioneer in managerial psychology and media manipulation.
The quotes from this guy in the archives are amazing.
They are so good.
He would say things to the press like, "We'll win without getting off the coach." Or famously, With 10, our team plays better than with 11.
He completely understood that professional sports at the highest level is largely a mental game.
Right.
He used the press to intimidate opponents and to artificially inflate the absolute confidence of his own players.
And he's playing mind games.
He realized that half the game is won in the minds of the athletes before they even step out of the tunnel.
He sounds like a modern combat sports promoter mixed with a chess grandmaster.
Exactly. He built an extraordinary team, blending the Hungarian stars like Kubala, Kocsis, and Zibor with local Catalan talent.
And it worked.
Oh, he created a highly disciplined, ruthlessly effective unit. Under HH, they won consecutive leagues and the Fairs Cup.
So the 1950s were undeniably a golden age.
Yeah.
You have raw, magical talent in Kubala, the psychological warfare of Herrera, and a massive 99,000-seat stadium to house it all.
Right.
But looking ahead in the timeline, it seems like having great players and a big stadium isn't enough to sustain an empire forever.
Clearly is.
As we move into the 70s and 80s, the game was changing. The traditional ways of playing were becoming stagnant. It would take the return of one very specific visionary to completely rewrite the actual geometry of how the sport was played.
Yes. The club experienced some very lean, sort of bloated years in the 1980s. But that frustration set the stage for what the archives lovingly refer to as the era of the Dream Team, spanning from roughly 1988 to 1996.
Okay, set the scene for us. Why was a structural reset so necessary in 1988?
Well, by the late 80s, the club under President José Luis Núñez was facing a crisis of identity. They were still a massive institution, but on the pitch, they were reactive. They were buying expensive players, but lacking a unifying philosophy.
They needed a spark.
They needed someone who didn't just want to win games, but someone who really understood the soul of the club and could rebuild it from the ground up.
So they make a historic decision.
Mm-hmm.
They bring back Johan Cruyff as manager.
A legend.
Cruyff had been a legendary player for the club back in the 1970s, famously choosing Barcelona over Real Madrid because he refused to play for a club associated with Franco.
Right.
But his return as manager in 1988 fundamentally altered the club's destiny forever.
Cruyff arrives, evaluates the squad, and drops this incredible quote: "If we want things to change, we must change history."
I absolutely love that. It's just so audacious.
It is.
I compare Johan Cruyff to a tech visionary who looks at a stagnant industry
Right.
and decides to completely rewrite the operating system.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Because before Cruyff, managers were basically trying to win games using the standard tools, playing defensive, marking man-to-man, relying on physical strength. Cruyff came in and changed the user interface of football itself.
That's a highly accurate analogy. Cruyff imported the concept of total football from his Dutch mentor, Rinus Michels. But he didn't just copy it. He evolved it and made it distinctly Barcelona's.
For the listener who might not be a huge tactical nerd, explain total football. How did Cruyff want them to play?
Okay, so instead of thinking of players as fixed chess pieces on a board where the defender stays in defense and a striker only attacks, Cruyff treated the football pitch like a liquid environment.
A liquid environment. What does that mean in practice?
If a defender moves forward to attack a space, a midfielder instinctively flows back into his spot to cover.
Wow, okay.
It requires every player on the pitch to be technically comfortable with the ball at their feet and to have an extreme, almost radar-like awareness of space.
He wanted a team of universal players. But how do you train that? You can't just tell a guy to have better spatial awareness.
You rewire their brains. And Cruyff did this by introducing a daily training exercise called the rondo.
The rondo. The archives mention this as a pivotal turning point. Mechanically, what is it?
On the surface, it looks like a really simple drill. A large circle of players stands on the outside, passing the ball rapidly to each other, usually with only one touch allowed.
Okay.
Meanwhile, one or two players in the middle desperately try to intercept the ball.
It sounds like a game of keep-away kids play in the schoolyard.
It does, but mathematically and neurologically, it is incredibly demanding.
Why is that?
When you only have one touch, you have to know exactly where you were going to pass the ball before you even receive it. You have to map the positions of all your teammates and the defenders in real time.
Oh, wow.
The rondo wasn't just a passing drill, it was cognitive load training. It forced hyper-fast decision-making and flawless technique under extreme pressure.
It's neuroplasticity in action. They're literally carving new neural pathways so that during a match, moving the ball quickly and fluidly becomes a subconscious reflex.
Exactly. The rondo became the philosophical and physical foundation of how Barcelona would play for the next 4 decades. He demanded possession. He famously said, There is only one ball, so you need to have it.
And the archives note that the torch was officially passed to this new era in a very literal way. They mention the farewell of Migueli in 1989.
Right, Migueli.
Migueli was a legendary center back, an absolute physical enforcer who played 553 games for the club over a decade and a half.
He was the embodiment of the old way. Tough, uncompromising, physical.
Right, so Migueli plays his final match in '89, steps off the pitch, and it symbolically clears the way for Cruyff's new vision of technical, cerebral football to take total control.
And that vision yielded rapid fruit. Cruyff overhauled the squad, bringing in technical players who suited his system.
And it paid off.
Big time. They won the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1989, beating Sampdoria. But the absolute pinnacle of this era, and arguably the most psychologically important night in the club's history up to that point, happened on May 20, 1992 at Wembley Stadium in London.
The European Cup final. Again playing against Sampdoria. This is the moment.
Yes, the big one.
Up to this point, despite all their domestic success, despite the massive stadium, they had never won the biggest prize in European football. The psychological pressure in that locker room must have been suffocating.
It was the culmination of nearly a century of striving. The weight of history was entirely on their shoulders.
And what does Cruyff say to his players in the locker room right before they walk out onto the pitch for the highest pressure moment of their lives?
You know this quote.
I do. He looks at them and simply says, "Go out and enjoy it."
It is an absolute masterstroke of sports psychology.
I mean, I want you, the listener, to really put yourself in that room. Imagine being told that before the biggest presentation of your career or the biggest exam of your life.
Right.
Just go out and enjoy it. What does that reveal about Cruyff's understanding of the human mind?
It reveals that he completely understood fear is the enemy of creativity. The complex, liquid, one-touch football he had spent 4 years drilling into their brains via the rondo. It required players to take risks.
Because they had to pass it so quickly.
Exactly. It required them to attempt dangerous passes and trust their intuition. If they went out onto the Wembley pitch terrified of making a mistake, they would freeze.
They would tense up.
They would revert to basic, safe, defensive football.
By telling them to enjoy it, he released the pressure valve. He gave them permission to play the beautiful, risky game he had taught them.
And it worked, although it was
It
agonizing.
was a tight game, right?
Very. The match went deep into extra time, still scoreless. But because they kept playing their game, they eventually drew a foul just outside the penalty area in the 111th minute.
Wow, that late.
And Ronald Koeman stepped up and hit a thunderous, brilliant free kick into the back of the net to win it.
The psychological barrier was finally shattered. 1 million people lined the streets of Barcelona to welcome them home. It was just mass euphoria.
And that European success fueled absolute domestic dominance. The Dream Team won 4 consecutive La Liga titles from 1991 to 1994.
And the way they won them was straight out of a Hollywood script.
Completely.
The archives paint this incredible visual of the last 3 of those titles. They were all won dramatically on the final day of the season.
Talk about suspense.
Because all the games were played simultaneously, Barcelona would finish their match and then just have to wait.
The players would literally be standing out on the pitch, exhausted, while the massive Camp Nou crowd held its breath, everyone listening to portable radios.
Just waiting in agonizing suspense for the results of their rivals' matches, usually Real Madrid or Deportivo La Coruña, to come through over the airwaves to find out if they were champions.
And 3 years in a row, the results went their way.
That is just wild.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it wasn't just the football team achieving these historic milestones.
Oh, right, the multi-sport aspect.
Yeah. During this exact same period in the 1990s, the Barcelona handball team, managed by a visionary named Valero Rivera, went on an unprecedented run.
Wow.
Winning its first EHF Champions League titles.
So the other sports sections of the club are rising to the absolute peak of Europe at the exact same time.
Precisely. Think back to Joan Gamper's original vision in that gymnasium in 1899.
Right, the 4 pillars.
He explicitly wanted a multi-sport club. Almost a century later, that founding vision is fully realized, with the handball team starting its own era of European domination simultaneously with the football team.
That is awesome.
It proves that the club's founding DNA was completely intact and operating at scale.
That is such a satisfying full circle moment. But, as you always tell me, the true test of an institution isn't just succeeding when a charismatic visionary leader is in the room.
Very true.
The true test is whether the organization can survive that leader's departure, institutionalize their methods, and carry that ethos successfully into a new century.
Exactly. Cruyff laid a philosophical foundation that was rock solid. He taught them how to think about the game.
Right.
But the transition into the modern era would require the club to scale those values globally in an increasingly commercialized sports landscape.
Which brings us to the final segment in our archives.
Tracking from 1996 through to 2020, the centenary, global reach, and the golden era.
The 1998-1999 season marked the club's centenary. 100 years since the Craigslist ad.
A century.
And they didn't just throw a party. They went all out to frame it as a profound cultural event. They commissioned the famous Catalan artist Antoni Tapies to design the official poster.
Which is a beautiful echo of their very first trophy, the Copa Masia, being a piece of modernist art.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Once again, they are explicitly linking their sporting achievements with high art.
The legendary Catalan singer Joan Serrat sang the anthem on the pitch. It was this deeply emotional year of looking back.
A huge celebration.
And remarkably, the athletes across the entire organization delivered the ultimate birthday present. All 4 of the club's professional sections, football, basketball, handball, and roller hockey, won their respective league titles that centenary year.
It's an incredible clean sweep. Louis van Gaal was managing the football team at the time, securing successive league titles to close out the 90s.
Okay, moving into the new millennium.
And the momentum carried right into it. In 2003, the basketball team finally conquered Europe, winning the EuroLeague behind stars like Dejan Bodiroga and Arunas Jasikovičius.
But 2003 was also a massive turning point in the boardroom. The club held elections, and the members voted in a new president, Joan Laporta.
Laporta brought in a young, highly dynamic generation of directors who realized the club needed a major jolt of energy.
A refresh.
They completely revitalized the club's image. They hired Frank Rijkaard as the manager, and crucially, they signed the Brazilian superstar Ronaldinho.
Ronaldinho. He's one of those rare athletes who transcends the sport.
He really is.
He injected pure, unadulterated joy back into the club. He brought the Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game.
He was a total magician with the ball, constantly smiling.
And that's what I love about him. He played with this infectious smile on his face, which feels like a direct spiritual continuation of Johan Cruyff telling his players to go out and enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely.
Ronaldinho was the physical embodiment of that philosophy.
It completely was, and that joy translated to immense success.
Yeah.
In 2006, they won their second Champions League title in Paris.
Coming from behind, right?
Yes, coming from behind to beat Arsenal with late goals from Samuel Eto'o and Giuliano Belletti. But arguably, Laporta's most significant and globally impactful legacy occurred off the pitch that very same year.
Yes, the 2006 UNICEF agreement. So what does this all mean?
This is huge.
To give you context, up until this point, FC Barcelona had proudly refused to wear corporate sponsors on their shirts. They were one of the last major holdouts in modern sports.
Right, the shirt was sacred?
Their shirt was sacred. When they finally broke that tradition, you would expect them to take the biggest corporate check available. Instead, they executed a historic, almost unimaginable reversal of sports capitalism.
Instead of being paid tens of millions by a massive corporation to put a logo on their chest, FC Barcelona actually paid UNICEF to put the charity's logo on their shirt.
They gave the premium real estate on their jersey to a humanitarian organization, and they donated a percentage of their revenue to fund UNICEF's programs protecting children's rights globally.
Unheard of.
Now, I have to push back a little here as a skeptic. Isn't that just a brilliant, cynical PR move? Like you buy a charity logo so you look like the good guys, making your brand more globally palatable while you dominate global sports capitalism.
It's a fair critique, and certainly the branding benefits were immense. It projected an image of care and social responsibility worldwide.
Right.
But if you look at the archives, it was fundamentally the ultimate expression of Gamper's original desire for the club to serve a higher social purpose.
Okay, tying it back to the founders.
It proved they were willing to leave massive amounts of guaranteed corporate money on the table to make a statement about who they were. It definitively solidified their motto of being Mädchen Club, more than a club.
It really is the ultimate flex of their historical values. They were basically broadcasting to the world, we are so successful, so secure in our identity that we will buy our own sponsor.
Exactly.
And all of this careful architectural work, the philosophy, the branding, the talent, it set the stage for the absolute pinnacle. From 2008 to 2020, they entered a stratosphere of success that is almost hard to comprehend.
In 2008, the board made a really bold decision. They replaced Frank Rijkaard with a young, relatively unproven manager who had come up entirely through their own system.
Josep Guardiola.
Pep Guardiola.
Yes, Guardiola was a disciple of Cruyff. He had actually played in the Dream Team.
He was immersed in the philosophy.
And as manager, he essentially doubled down on everything Cruyff had taught him. He demanded that hyper-fast, attacking, possession-based style of play. But crucially, he built his team primarily around players who were developed in the club's own youth academy, La Masia.
La Masia is famous for basically churning out technical geniuses.
How do they do it?
Because they teach every child in the academy to play the exact same rondo-based spatial awareness football that the first team plays.
So it's systemic.
Guardiola harvested a generation of talent players like Xavi, Iniesta, Puyol, Busquets, and of course, Lionel Messi, who had all been marinating in this philosophy since they were young children.
And the result was the greatest Barcelona team ever assembled.
Without a doubt.
The archives state they set a staggering record of 17 professional titles across the club sections in just the 2011-12 and 2014-15 seasons.
Just mind-blowing numbers.
The football team won 3 more Champions League titles during this era, playing a style of football that completely mesmerized the globe. They didn't just beat teams, they systematically dismantled them by monopolizing the ball.
If you look at the Laporta and Guardiola eras, they were essentially the ultimate harvest of the seeds that Joan Gamper planted in 1899 and that Johan Cruyff watered in the early 90s.
Right.
The heavy reliance on La Masia youth development wasn't just a cost-saving strategy. It was the ultimate purest expression of the club's identity.
Yeah.
They were teaching their own children how to play the game the Barcelona way and then letting those children conquer the world.
It is an unbelievable sweeping arc. Let's just review what we've unpacked here today.
Okay, let's look at the big picture.
We started this deep dive looking at a mundane magazine ad placed by a Swiss guy who just wanted to kick a ball around with some expats in 1899.
Simple beginnings.
And we follow that single thread through fascist bombings. We tracked it through the darkest periods of political oppression, where a stadium morphed into a sanctuary of cultural survival.
The oasis of freedom.
We saw them build the biggest concrete temple in Europe to house a Hungarian refugee who could bend the laws of physics.
Cool.
We watched a Dutch visionary completely rewrite the tactical geometry of the sport simply by telling his players to go out and have fun.
The dream team.
And we saw them reverse the laws of sports capitalism, paying to put a charity on their shirts before achieving absolute record-breaking global dominance with a team built from their own academy.
It is a remarkable testament to the power of establishing a clear, unyielding identity and trusting it implicitly over an entire century.
It really is.
But, examining this entire timeline and arriving at this absolute peak of global perfection, this raises an important question.
You can hear the gears turning. What's the question?
Well, if a club's fierce, unique identity is fundamentally forged in the fires of regional struggle, oppression, and intense political opposition, what happens to that soul when it ultimately wins? Can an institution truly remain a defiant grassroots symbol of being more than a club when it achieves absolute, frictionless, multi-billion-dollar global dominance?
Oof. That is a heavy, lingering thought. Does becoming the establishment inherently destroy the rebel identity that built you?
Right.
Can you still be the resistance when you actually own the throne? That is definitely something for all of us to chew on.
It's a paradox that applies to tech startups, to independent artists, to grassroots political movements, really anything that starts small and passionate and eventually becomes massive.
Yeah.
At what point does scaling your values dilute them?
Exactly. And that brings us right back to where we started today. When you look at the architecture of a genuinely great, world-changing organization, maybe you shouldn't just be looking for the clean, predictable lines of a corporate boardroom blueprint.
No, probably not.
Maybe you should be looking for the messy, organic, passionate roots of a community that was fighting for its life.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope the insight you gained today applies far beyond the boundaries of a football pitch. Keep questioning the blueprints around you, and we will catch you next time.
And that brings another quiet episode of Sleepcast to an end. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope our two hosts helped you relax, slow your thoughts, and perhaps drift gently off to sleep. New episodes of Sleepcast are released every day, 7 days a week, all year round. Follow Sleepcast on the podcast app you are using now, so new episodes are added automatically, and you can be notified whenever another wonderfully boring story is released. Until next time, sleep peacefully and good night. Sleepcast, probably the most boring podcast in the world.